Muslim, converted to Christianity, and later on in his life became a Protestant pastor. Works in the Vancouver area. There's a large Persian community out there. He's got a few issues with this one. First of all, a couple of his old Muslim friends told him that if there was a jihad coming into Canada, they'd have to unfortunately kill him. Okay? This is real life. And I'm not saying most Canadian Muslims share this viewpoint, but a couple of his friends did. So you begin to understand why he has concerns that something like this could come to be legislation. Even if they were just being stupid and saying things over the top to scare him and threaten him, here's a bit of a problem he could have if something like this got actually turned into legislation. Okay? He's out there sharing why he changed from Islam to Christianity. Freedom of religion. People changed from Christianity to Islam. He went the other direction. Some of the things he explains why he left Islam could be construed as Islamophobic. Criticism, and this is a very real-life example. I've seen guys from the Sudan who also talk about why they switched to Christianity. So someone like that could lose his freedoms, boom, like that. Because when people were thinking about this, one of the pushbacks I got is, this isn't realistic, it won't affect anyone's life, don't be serious. Silly about this. This gentleman has an absolutely perfect example of how his religious freedom of speech could be. So, we've got one step of the motion gone forward. We'll see what the parliamentary committee does. I think the Liberals took a lot of heat about this. In fact, I know some of their MPs were complaining. They did not like the pressure they were getting. And so we'll see what they come up with at the committee report, and then if they decide to turn it into legislation.
One last point.
Go ahead.
The head of the committee, Hetty Fry, is not known to be particularly the sharpest knife in the drawer.
I know Hetty fairly well, yeah. And I'm of the same opinion.
Right there.
Yeah. Having said that, Hetty's not going to make the decisions on this one. Look, the decisions on this one are going to be made straight from the Prime Minister's office. Hetty and whoever's on that committee will be told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and they will be in charge of not thinking for themselves. So we'll see. This one's going to go down. The National Post had some polling data on this, and I think as the debate goes on, it only gets worse for the Liberals, particularly among many of the new Canadian communities in the GTA, because that's where I've actually got asked more questions about this than anywhere else. Because if you live in rural Saskatchewan, most people in rural Saskatchewan have never met someone who goes to a mosque, ever. Okay? If you live in the GTA, you have a lot more interaction. You maybe come from Malaysia or something like that. My friend from Iran. And so there's a lot more reaction. So interestingly enough, the strongest reaction against this has not come from heartland, conservative, rural Western Canadian ridings. It's come from more the swing belt of constituencies in and around Toronto. And that's why I think if there's political pressure put on this one, the Liberals will fold. Remember, they're the party of weather vanes. So keep it up. Your boy will keep up the pressure, I'm pretty sure. And we'll go from there. So who was next? Who had I pointed to next? Okay, we'll come down here because I was not seeing you before.
So it's related to that. I have two questions, and it's related to what's embedded in motion chemicals. I sent my questions to every conservative MP in March. And my response is only one conservative MP actually answered my question. So the questions are, is Islam a religion of peace, number one? And secondly, are those terrorist activities we hear about almost every day, are they connected to the religion of Islam?
Okay, so the question is Islam a religion of peace?
So what do you know about the religion? Is it a religion of peace?
I would say, look, my viewpoint, and I say this about Christianity too, Islam is a term for a number of very closely related religious practices and traditions. Okay? So when you talk about Islam, there is no one Islam, just as you have Orthodoxy, Protestantism, evangelical Protestantism, all that sort of stuff. In Christianity, you have different nuances. So there are some Islams that are definitely not religions of peace. They're religions of hostility, they're religions of terrorism, they're religions that are very aggressive and very negative. There are other Islams. I really get along well with the Ahmadiyyan community. they definitely have never hurt a fly in their life. So there's yes and no at the same time. So some Islams are very violent and very negative. Other Islams are very peaceful. And it depends which ones you're dealing with on a particular day. Because unless you're an insider, it is really hard to sort one out from the other. So that was a yes and a no. And what was your second question? I'm sorry.
Are there terrorist activities related to Islam?
Oh yeah, there's jihadism, Islamism, and this is the concern tying things back to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is one of those versions of Islam that is violent and dangerous and oppressive and tied in with terrorism.
I asked that because there were the petition 411, that was passed in October, and it included in it.
Yeah, that was the one where it was objected to, and then when there was deals cut among the leadership without telling the critic or the members, and then when people were out of the house, things got done.
Because it says that it's no way connected to our religion, and it's still sort of amenable too, because you make reference back to the so that's kind of the position.
Yeah. Look, I remember when I first saw this, I went to the Oxford English Dictionary for the definition of Islamophobia. And I'm going to, you just go to the dictionary definition because the Liberals argued in the House they had their own unique definition for this. I got news. Words are something that when you put it out there, people share. And the definition was criticism of Islam, including political Islam. Okay? So I mean, at that point it was like, and for me, all these words that end with phobia are just words that are meant to intimidate people. Transphobia, homophobia, Islamophobia. I mean, there's never been a conservative phobia. Someday perhaps there should be fear of conservatives. You sometimes wonder, I mean, there was what was known as Harper derangement syndrome. That could have been a form of Harperphobia, fear of Stephen Harper. So maybe these words could have some future use. But for me, anytime they throw that phobia on the word, that is what they call passive aggressiveness. The idea is to make you on the defensive before you even discuss the argument, rather than actually having a legitimate argument. So, okay. And who is next?
I have two questions. So one of the questions is, how can you increase our national security to run the border? Because now, every day, some of the people illegally border, and one of the border officers actually she was hit by the illegal immigrants. How do you do that? And also,
Yeah, there's a couple different responses to that depending on what you're asking. For the very specific circumstance where right now we're having illegal immigrants come around the borders because there's a loophole, because they can be stopped if they come at a regular border crossing. But if they come around and they make it into Canada, far enough in, like a few feet, but not at an official border crossing, they're protected under a 1985 court decision based upon the Charter of Rights, which says they can be treated with different claimant status. Now, I put this out, interestingly enough, we think of all people, O'Leary adopted my position on this one. We said this back in January. What needs to be done is the House of Commons needs to pass what's known as the notwithstanding clause in legislation revoking the 1985 court decision which allowed this loophole, because it completely makes a mockery of the way the law is supposed to be. And if you do that, you close the loophole. There's other things you can do with cross-border agreements with the United States. The Americans need to enforce stuff. But right there, you close it off on that situation for the current illegal immigration situation. Now, some of this was caused because of Justin Trudeau's irresponsible, come on into Canada anytime, anywhere, don't worry about the rules sort of mentality and message he was saying. If you're asking about other things on broader security threats, one of the things where I've been unique on this leadership race, I'm not the only one, Chris Alexander agrees with me on this too. Canada needs to mature. We're a big major nation. We need to develop, like the British have the MI6, their Foreign Intelligence Service. We need to start to get to that point too. It's going to be a gradual evolution, breaking away from CSIS because they do some of that. But we're at a point where we need to start to develop international intelligence so we know of terrorist incidences, national security threats abroad before they start to come and hit us. And that's something the British, the Americans have expertise. We can work with them on. So it's better to find out on something before it hits your shore than when it hits your shore. So that's one way where I'm a little bit unique from some of the other candidates calling for that change over the years. And there's other things. I think a fair number of us have said, look, if staffing levels are inadequate at the border, CBS officials need to get more resources. But I think pretty much the entire Conservative Party is in agreement on that. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. I'm going to get in trouble with everyone else now. So
the second question actually is for my.
Okay.
She's a small business owner, and she wants to
Tax cut, tax cut, tax cut.
because like everything is increasing and the cost.
Yep.
In Alberta, we are aiming at in 2018, we are going to increase the minimum wage to $15 per hour. So she said that labor cost is increasing, food cost is increasing, the government is also increasing tax. She's not.
Yeah. You asked me some tough questions because they're about things that are being done by Premier Rachel Notley. Now, in Saskatchewan, you know what we did? We just don't elect new Democrats like you do in Alberta. We're not a socialist province like Alberta, so it's a little bit hard for me to understand. And everyone who grew up in Saskatchewan is laughing because we always used to elect the NDP, and we always had a worse economy. We always did. That's why we all came to Calgary. 250,000 Calgarians originated in Saskatchewan. So, okay, if I was, some of those things are purely provincial. So the solution to that is get rid of your current premier with whatever comes out the other side. I don't look. They're figuring out how to put the Wild Rose, the PCs, and whatever they end up coming out with here. I don't care, it's going to be better than the current mess. On a more serious level, we need to reduce taxes across the board. So again, as the Liberals put in the carbon tax, I will pull it back. Because that's a tax on our utility bills, that's a tax on all the input, all the cars and trucks and everything that drives there. We can't, because of the way the rules are put up, the hike to the CPP that the Liberals are bringing in, that's almost going to be impossible to reverse. Because you need 7 provinces on side to reverse that. But that's why I've talked about cutting a little bit of business tax, a little bit of corporate tax, personal income tax. So my goal is across the board to bring down the tax rate, which will give a better economic boost across the board, and should actually save her some money and stop her from taking. The other thing that's very useful, and again, I'm not unique on this in the leadership race, we need to end the uncertainty for the oil and gas sector because Calgary, not totally, but almost totally lives and dies on that. We are going to be uncompetitive with the Americans if we keep going ahead. And if we get the oil and gas sector, and I know a lot of it has to depend with the prices, if we get that going, business booms for everyone in the city. And so the uncertainty about carbon regulations need to end. We need to pull that all away. And we need to take away the discrimination against that industry, and that will boost everything. I'm assuming she lives here in Calgary and across the board. And for Alberta, you can do everything right, but if oil and gas isn't going, it's a problem here. So, okay, we got a lot of questions now. Sheets was sent in some questions, so fire a couple to Matt me, some of the pre-recorded questions, and we'll go from there. I'm a geophysicist by trade. Yes, you want to diversify your economy, but that means you should keep the government out of picking the winners and losers. My other degree is in economics, and I rather picked it up as a hobby because the math overlapped with my geophysics degree, and because I like to read economic history. It doesn't matter where you go in the history of the world's economy, if the government starts to get really smart and clever and plan something out, it doesn't work. So yes, Alberta should diversify its economy, but the private sector is going to figure out how to do it. This is one of the things that we had in Saskatchewan all the time. I supported, I didn't vote, I was too young, for the Progressive Conservatives in Alberta. In Saskatchewan in 82 to 90, 91, they were in government. They did a lot of good things, but they kept trying to diversify the economy by doing some big government-funded project. And they almost always ended in fiscal disaster. Okay? And this was the party that I preferred relative to the NDP, who were frankly worse. Okay? So you want to stay away from all of that sort of diversification when the government wins and picks winners and losers. Atlantic Canada has done that for years. It has not worked for them. Frankly, the best thing for Atlantic Canada is if we get our defense budget in a proper place. They would get government money from that, but it would actually be for some needed service, because New Brunswick and Nova Scotia are strategically some of the most important areas in the country for national defense if you're funding it correctly. So that's an Atlantic answer there, but I'll take a second question because you've got like 8 of them you were supposed to ask. Okay.
If you are elected leader of the Conservative Party, what would be your policy to use to gain middle voters and gain the federal election?
So talking about strategy, the question was, what's your political strategy to win the actual election? And this is a really good question, because sometimes people do think what you emphasize in a leadership race is going to be the only thing you emphasize in a general election. Okay? Not so. Okay? You stick with your principles, you stick with what you have. There's no if, and, but, or maybe about it. We're going to attack the Liberals on their economic record next time. That's going to be the core. Okay? These guys are running up $25 billion at least a year deficit. They're taxing the living daylights out of people, and they're not getting any economic bang for the buck. So the number one thing you're going to do is you are going to contrast our economic proposals with theirs. That is where Middle Canada wants to know, because that's about security, that's about the basics. Number two, and this is where I actually need to point out to people, I'm a better strategic choice than most of the rest of the field. How many seats in this country are majority visible minority? Anyone know? 33. Okay? The Conservatives hold 2 of those seats. All 33 of those seats are socially and culturally conservative. Okay? There's about 50,000 Filipinos who come to Canada every year, new immigrants. They're the biggest group, Filipino Canadians. What do you think their attitudes are when they come here about legalization of marijuana, safe injection sites, all that sort of stuff? They're coming from a country where their president has said, and he's got popular support for this, I'm not recommending it, vigilante action on drug dealers is acceptable. Okay? If you come from Singapore, you're used to drug dealers getting executed. Okay? This is something a lot of long-term Canadian political types somehow don't grasp. New Canadian voters are very culturally conservative. It doesn't hurt to make a socially, culturally appeal to them on the cultural, social values. Talking to them the other day about safe injection drug sites, whatever they call it, in Vancouver, okay? One of the guys said to me, he said, look, Chinese Canadians love to live in the downtown core. They got property down there, it reminds them of home. And all those places are now going to have safe injection drug sites. You know what that's going to do to our property values? Okay? This is why you have to be willing to not only do the economic issues, but you have to be willing to do cultural issues as well. Now, when you do a proper campaign, you pick 1, 2, 3 main themes. You don't do it 2.5 years in advance, you do it 6 to 8 months ahead of time, and you start to gear in on what they're going to be. If there's a particular type of recession and it's on unemployment, you emphasize that. But you pick 1 or 2, 3 major themes, and you figure out where you go on it. Okay? I hate to say it, Atlantic Canada, where we hold 0 seats and we probably need 8 to 12 to form a majority government, they're not as fiscally conservative as I would like them to be. So we're going to have to find ways to do things out there. I mentioned defense policy for New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Big boom to their economy in those 2 provinces. If you know where our military is, things like that. So my strategy, you have 3 major pillars for your campaign to be decided as you get closer. One of them has to be economy. You don't shy away from cultural issues because they work for us in areas like Atlantic Canada and with new Canadian voting blocks, 33 ridings, majority visible minority. And then you also do allow some flexibility for regional campaign teams to pick themes that work for them under the national themes. So you build a solid foundation of conservative principles. You then put some things in place to prop it up, and you have your 1, 2, 3 main themes nationally. This is what worked for us in 2006, where we had 5 basic points, which is probably 1 or 2 too many, but that's how you win. It's a simple strategy, and it's a core philosophical conservative strategy. Nothing liberal light about it. Think what Harper did in 05. He didn't retreat, he doubled down. Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister of England for 11 years, not by being Miss Softy. He was tough, okay? Ronald Reagan, and I can go through the whole list of things to do on that one. So that's the underlying strategy. So we'll come back a little bit later, but who decided, okay.
Well, I had a question, but sort of forgot what I asked. When we're talking about the social media, liberals taking heat, there's no way for us that are active in social media to see the heat we're applying to the Prime Minister and his party. So how do you
The way you get the heat is you find Liberal MPs who are complaining in Ottawa that, yeah, this is actually a good point you've raised. Sometimes the MPs should give feedback to people about what's working. Because we were getting MPs from the Vancouver area, we were hearing reports that they were trying to talk down the Liberals from going further because they were having problems. Some of the things is like this. Talk to people who go in to talk to members of Parliament in their office. Again, if you just have Conservative MPs, you'll not find out what they're doing. But in BC, people would go in, they'd put pressure on their MP, and the MP would admit, yeah, I'm not altogether comfortable like this. I mean, we saw some of it. Erwin Kotler was in the press admitting Islamophobia was a word that absolutely needed to be pulled out on that. So you've got to figure out what's going on in the chat rooms and out there, and talk to people in Ontario, BC, where they have Liberal MPs and ask them, have you actually gone to see? Because when guys are in their office, they're fairly candid about the way things are going most of the time.
So this is your
Yeah, you put pressure on them. If you actually show up, we know you're more interested than if you just fire us a one-line email. Because I've been an MP for years. We sometimes take a week or so to get back to call someone because they didn't give us enough information, so we really don't know what to answer. They won't remember. I've done that so often, it's like, okay, do I call this guy back? He might not even know what he called me on originally. So, but if you show up and you visit with me, yeah, I know you're serious. And all MPs are the same way. Okay, I know you've had a turn before, so who hasn't had a turn yet? Okay, I will go back. I'll start with the gentleman here and I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
I'd like to you talk about the federal and government relationship. I'll leave it fairly open to you. But as you answer that, I'd like to hear how your ideas and your philosophies could impact